Good afternoon, everyone. I know most of you are probably going to be catching this well after the stream has gone live and been published, but I figured since I started working on this little tank yesterday on stream, I may as well do a stream finishing it out and letting anyone who wants to see the final tabletop ready version of it see how it turned out. So, for those of you who did not see yesterday, we are working on a Warhammer, the Horus Heresy, Demos pattern, Rhino APC. D-Man, welcome to the audience. Um, like I said, we're finishing out a Blood Angels Demos pattern, Rhino APC, which, if he ever catches it, I hope that Red Pill Rhino finds a little bit of humor in the fact that this is predominantly a red Rhino APC that's being worked on. Not something really planned, because I had no idea when I first got into the Blood Angels chapter that I was going to end up streaming with a guy who went by the screen name Red Pill Rhino. So, a little bit of humor there, I guess. D-Man, if you would like to jump on, I do have this. I did post the StreamYard link. I can do so again. All I ask is that you have a good microphone and a YouTube-friendly avatar and screen name. Just let me know if you can't see the link and you would like to join in, and I will definitely repost it for you. But continuing on from yesterday, got pretty much all the interior work done. Now we're working on the exterior body of this particular APC tank. By the time this stream is over, I'm hoping to have the entire outside finished, as well as having the gunner slash driver hatches put in place. The thing with this vehicle is the way the rules are written, you can equip it with one of like 4 heavy weapons options, plus a twin-linked bolter as pintle mounts on this vehicle. So one hatch will have a pair of bolt guns mounted to it, and the other one will have a TC slash. Hey, no issues whatsoever, D-Man. When I'm doing something that's not a topic-related show, it's an open invite to anyone who wants to participate. If you have any questions in the chat about this or any other topics that I've spoken of in the last few months, go ahead and drop them in. If it's YouTube safe, I will definitely answer it. But the plan for today is not to get this Rhino completely 100% finished. So we're not going to be doing any weathering. We're not going to be doing any damage painted on or sculpted on. And we're not going to be doing any water slide decals. We're just going to get this vehicle to the point where I would be happy to put it on the table. Once I've got my Blood Angels army for the Horus Heresy to the point where I'm reasonably certain I'm not going to be adding to it, that's when I'm going to go and do the weathering, the bases, and make sure everything has the faction slash unit decals that are needed. Mainly because when I do the bases, I just want it to be a one and done, and the same with the weathering. My regular Warhammer 40k Blood Angels army, there are models that I've had for years, and you can tell that they are different ages because each squad has a different base and or different weather effects on them. In my opinion, kind of detracts from the overall appearance of the army. So I actively decided when I started on the Heresy, I was going to wait until I'm happy with the collection and don't plan to add anything major to it before doing any of the weathering, basing, etc. Now, you all may notice I don't dip my brush super often and I don't water my paint down. That's because I use a very heavily modified layering technique for what I'm doing. If you notice, the brush dries out on its own, leaving certain areas like the recesses here around the hatch the original base color. I do that so one, it makes it a little bit easier when I decide to go and do my weathering to do that, so it gives the paint something to stick to when I dry brush. And two, it also allows me to highlight areas that I want to go back to and apply additional detail work to at a later date. And it's entirely possible that this Rhino may end up having some paint applied to make it look like there's blood splatter along certain areas, as though the driver was a little too aggressive in getting into an area occupied by opposing players. Or I could go ahead and add some stuff to make it look like there's oil slicks coming down certain areas of the vehicle, as though maintenance hasn't been done properly, or my opponent might have hit something a little on the sensitive side, and leaving the thing with a nice oil leak along the side and bottom. I don't know yet. That's all decisions that I will make at a later time. A lot of people I know who do this hobby have the really unusual, at least to me, habit of fully planning out everything they're going to do. And I will do that occasionally when it comes to bigger projects, like the Thunderhawk gunship that I did earlier this year. I pretty much laid out a roadmap for all of the major work on it. However, I did not do any planning for how I'm going to do weathering, how I'm going to do a base, or if I'm going to do anything to make it look like the pilots were a little overly aggressive when when it was time for them to come into land. And that's kind of the way I approach all vehicles in Warhammer 40,000. I'll do them up, and I will just kind of let my imagination take me and build a narrative for said vehicles or larger models when I'm finishing them out. Because I've noticed while working on them, some models, they are headquarters elements that I absolutely loathe, and I'm doing them only because it's kind of the only option available to make that army legal for the game. The other models, I'll be just pouring detail onto, because for whatever reason, I decide I really like that particular piece. One of my sergeants that I have never really survived all the way through to be classified as a game winner. I have put a huge amount of detail into, because as I was working on it, I was building a narrative behind that particular figure. I'm a big proponent of building to the lore, not the meta. Now, a lot of 40K players and a lot of hobbyists in general for other games, they don't like that. They like you to build a list, or they like to build out a list that is going to be a game winner and only buying models for that list. That's their jam. I'm not going to knock it. My thought process is, given that I'm spending hours painting these things and I'm going to spend hours and months working on it, I want it to I want to be emotionally invested. And hey, D-Man, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I've been doing hobby work of this sort for somewhere in the neighborhood of 20 years, not counting the little model airplanes and starships I built as a child. Um, in fact, if I really wanted to, I could get up and go grab one of my earliest war game miniatures, but honestly, it's on the other end of the room, and this is a wired headset that I'm working on. I don't want to leave you guys with dead air while I go over and do that. Especially considering the fact that my cat has seemed to decide that my headset makes for a great toy today. Had to stop her from chewing on it and apply electrical tape around the outside. Well, I'm hopeful that everyone had a nice holiday weekend last weekend and is staying safe if you're one of the people that's unfortunate enough to be getting some nasty weather this weekend. I know in different parts of the country it's being really nasty, in other parts it's not hardly doing anything. So if you're getting rough stuff, I hope you're taken care of. Okay, now this entire side is done. I could go ahead and continue on this side, but rather than risking fingerprints here, I'm going to set this to the side for right now and go ahead and do some of these exhaust pipe smokestack assemblies that'll get glued onto the side of the vehicle here in a few minutes, hopefully. Now, in 40K lore, the Rhino actually has an amusing official name. It's not actually called the Rhino, except in common parlance. It's the RH1N0 Environmental Personnel Carrier. And the according to the background books that I have, it actually has assembly linkages both at the front and the back, so if something happens, the driver and commander can literally go out there and or go into the vehicle and reset it to use the front drivetrain or the back drivetrain on either side, basically making these vehicles all but impossible to mobility kill in the lore. On the table, most of the time rhinos go pop with a stern glance. You don't even need the dedicated anti-tank squads like the Melta gunners that are going to go in this one to do that. There have been times playing the game where I have actually taken down rhinos using heavy bolters. Now, before I glue these exhaust stacks on, I am going to be hitting them with a couple of different metallic paints to make them look like they've been heated up and spewing hot exhaust out of them. So it's not going to be one of these things where there's this nice black area coming off the top. It will be kind of a steel chrome, well, steel burnt chrome appearance. Also, when I do eventually weather this, I do fully intend to take some dark oil colored paint and apply it in such a way where it looks like it's had some spew out of the exhaust port. One thing I distinctly remember working with armored personnel carriers in the army is that if the oil mixture is not quite right, they will spew some of that out the exhaust manifolds, and it leaves just a nice gunky mess not too far from there. And please forgive the yawning, gentlemen and ladies, if you're watching. It it was a relatively rough night here at the apartment where I live at, between some of the neighbors deciding to act kind of crazy at midnight and my cat deciding around 1 a.m. it was time to play. I did not sleep hardly at all. um, Now, I'm going to go ahead and ask for anyone who is actively watching if there's any subject matters you would like to see me cover in the next year that may or may not be covered by any other individuals in our little community, or if there's any particular things that you're curious about with the things that I'm currently working on. I'm more than happy to answer it, and if it's a good topic idea, I will definitely use it in the future. I part of the reason I'm doing this is to give guys who are single and lonely something where they can come and have a virtual hangout. So I want to make sure that that the topics I'm talking about are topics that people are actually interested in. There's a few paranormal things I have in mind to discuss. There's a few conspiracy theories I have in mind to discuss. And there's also a few relationship nightmare type things I intend to discuss. However, I have no intention of ever doing TikTok reaction videos or things of that nature, and I'm also not planning on ever going through and doing anything going against any of the other people in the community or just responding to attackers. I want to keep this as drama free as possible. Okay. Now, what you see me doing on these little edges is going through and picking out areas that need to be one color as opposed to the other one. The color shift paints that I applied to these front and back quarter panels, they're intended to be applied what I would refer to as sloppy. And you do kind of have to go back and retouch regularly with them because they will go everywhere. One of the nice things, though, is once they are applied, they look really, really good and really, really steady on the paint applications, which is more than can be said for some of the special effect paints that I've come across. I have a few that are referred to as prismatic paints, such as this one here, that will give different appearances when it's been applied to different colors. That one in particular, when it's put over a black paint, will give kind of a metallic purple, and over a white paint will give kind of a metallic pink. There are others that are similar to that give different effects based on, like I said, what you put it over the top of. And after chatting with the guys on the stream yesterday, I'm not going to be applying or adding the dozer blade to this particular model, although I may end up magnetizing it at a point in the future so I can pop it on and off as I wish between games. But that's one of those maybe possibly if I get in the mood to torture myself like that, because magnetization on solid pieces like this is kind of a pain, especially when it's on a hollow surface. Anyone who saw the early stages of this yesterday knows that this front end here has nothing solid behind it that I could really do anything more than bore into to apply the magnets to. And if I were to go too deep, I would have to get creative with getting the magnets to stay in place. And it can be done, it's just really time consuming and really unpleasant to do. And normally I like to do the majority of the major paint work on the sprue, but because of these color shifts being on areas that wrap around, on the sprue would mean that there's big gaps where you would only have the primer visible or an undercoat visible. And then I'd have to go and retouch the darn thing anyway. So this time I just figured I'm going to go ahead and do the major paint work after assembly and go through and retouch as needed. Which, as you can see, I am to the point where I'm working on the upper surface of the vehicle. And you also might notice I'm not going back and retouching these areas in here. I want those areas, with a few exceptions, to be more or less dark. They are recesses, so it would make sense for them not necessarily to be painted in the vibrant red of the 9th Legion, but also they're areas that being that they have a lot of mechanical components to them, would logically have a lot of maintenance done, so paint would probably not want to stick there on the regular. Now, in early editions of Warhammer 40k, or at least previous ones to back when I first started playing the game, Rhino APCs had a rule where the top hatch that's modeled onto this vehicle could be opened in games, so the troops inside, if they're embarked, could shoot out. I'm reasonably sure they got rid of that particular rule, but it was a neat little bit of flavor that when you look at the way these are designed, and they're obviously based heavily on the US military's M113 personnel carrier, it fits with how those particular vehicles are supposed to be utilized, allegedly. And I say allegedly because I only worked with them twice in 13 years active duty. Okay, so here we are with both sides painted up. Now to finish out the top of the vehicle. And after I've got the top done, I will circle back to the exhaust stacks so I can get their steel color done. And once that's done, the main body of this vehicle will be essentially finished, aside from some black up here on the front end. And we will move on to doing the hatches and the gunner. Now I keep going back into the paint pot because honestly this particular pot is getting pretty close to extinguished. And I do what I can to get the most out of these paints as possible. Anyone who does anything with Citadel miniatures can tell you, Citadel, they put out some good paints, but they charge an arm and a leg. So you really want to get your money's worth out of them. And you also really want to make sure that you're being very cautious with where you're applying some of these paints to, because a few of them get very temperamental when they start getting low. And the red that I'm using doesn't have the habit of congealing or gelatinizing as some of the other paints out there do, but it can be quite temperamental when it's getting low. So the main hull of the vehicle is, I'm going to say, 95% complete. There's going to be some retouching that's going to be done here in a little bit, and there's going to be some additional detailing work that gets looked at here in a few minutes. But as it stands, the basic vehicle is fully painted, aside from the last few little odds and ends pieces. And now we are going on to the exhaust pipes. For the outermost exhaust pipe, I'm using what they refer to as Iron Warriors. It's a really good dark metallic that still looks like a steel or burnt chrome. I like to use dark metallic colors like that for exhausts because, in my opinion, on military vehicles, you don't want paint burning off as the vehicle is being utilized. Different people have different methodologies on that. Different individuals like to go more mechanically and historically accurate. I'm going to just say something that a lot of people don't like. It's based on your taste. If you think that... Hello, Trash Ops.
Yo, what's up?
Oh, not much. Just finishing something out that I started yesterday and figured I'd let people see the final result.
Yeah, man.
So how you doing, man?
Me? Oh, dude. Well, I'm just chilling. Right now, I'm actually at work, so I'm just, fucking off for a little bit.
Hey, I'm completely okay with that as long as you don't get yourself in trouble.
Nah, dude. I work as a mechanic, dude. We're good. I'm on the backside.
So, how's your
So,
holiday
what's up?
period going for you so
Oh,
far?
it was good. I can't complain. Um, spent time with the family. Got a chance to see everybody. Ate some good food. Drank some good drink. Just sucks
Hey,
I couldn't hang out with my friends, but it's all good.
we gotta take the good with the bad, right?
Exactly. Man, I've been seeing what's going on with Pop's mom. I feel bad for what's going on.
Yeah, I've seen that too. I feel for everyone involved there.
Yeah, yeah. But my real question is, where is Pop's brothers at? I know you said he is the oldest. So where's the
Honestly,
rest of his family?
I'm not in contact with Pop directly, so I cannot even begin to speculate on that.
Right.
Nor would I want to, because honestly, that would be rather disrespectful.
Right, right. No, but I'm just saying my 2 cents. You get what I mean?
Oh, I get you. I completely get you. And truth be told, his statement about being the eldest and having the family a familial obligation, I'm kind
Right.
of in a similar boat. I'm the eldest child in my family, and my sister lives down in Texas.
Oh, okay, okay.
So
So you still live in the same area where your folks are, for more or less.
pretty much. I
Okay.
One of my relatives currently lives about 2 hours from where I'm at. The other one lives about 2 blocks.
Oh wow.
In
Small
fact,
area.
my mom, who currently lives about 2 hours away because she's a widow, she and
Oh
I
man.
are seriously considering going in together and getting a duplex type house.
Uh huh.
So that way, one, she's got someone right there in case something crazy happens, and
Right. How old
two,
is she?
oh, she's in her 60s. Don't really want to go into a huge amount of detail because that is kind of rude without her consent.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
Just trying to get to know
everyone's...
you a little better.
Say again.
Just trying to get to know you a little better.
Yeah, that's fair.
We're
We've
we're a
only really
brotherhood.
interacted on Gilded, so
Yeah, yeah. So what are you making? I see your video feed.
This is a Warhammer Horus Heresy Rhino APC that I'm doing up in the Blood Angels Legion color palette.
Okay.
Yeah, as you've probably noticed on Gilded, I am a huge sci-fi nerd.
Mm-hmm.
And one of those franchises that I'm really deep into, both the lore and the hobby aspect of, is Warhammer 40,000.
Oh, wow.
Have you ever heard of that one?
I have not. Tell me about it.
First of all, are you military previously?
No. No.
Okay. Only asking that question because there's some of the terminology that crosses over. I want to make sure I'm not going to be insulting in some of the terms I use.
No, you're fine. Oh, my cousin was military, and I've had family members, so I mean, I understand. Also, watching Pop, I just kind of.
Okay.
What he says.
Awesome. So we can use some of the same jargon.
Bingo.
Well, Warhammer 40,000 is at its core a very, very dark universe that was intended originally as kind of a parody on society in the 1980s.
Right.
But the way it is now and the way the lore is written, the mainline 40K game is set about 40,000 years in the future. The human race has spread all across the galaxy, and like usual, we can't stop shooting things, including one another.
Yeah, that's true. That's still a found.
And the tagline for Warhammer 40,000 is, "In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war." Gotta set the tone.
Oh, hey, Amanda, point this out.
Yeah.
So, if the phone dies out, my battery died on my phone because I'm a shitty phone. If
Hey,
it does go out, just I'll get back on at like 5 when I get home from work. I'm probably about to leave here in like 30 minutes, anyways.
Hey, that's perfectly fine, dude. I'm just
I just
glad
wanna let you know.
I'm just glad if anyone joins in.
Well, I haven't spoken to you one-on-one in a while.
Yeah, I think you were probably using Spy Balloon or something similar as a screen name previously, weren't you?
Yeah. Yes, I was known as Spy Balloon. I mean, I told you why. I tell you that. I was letting everybody know, hey, I'm switching over soon. I'm thinking about becoming either a raccoon or something else.
Honestly, I'm going to be blunt. I don't remember that conversation. I'm not saying you didn't tell me. I'm just saying I don't remember it.
Well, it used to be Space Balloon.
Say that again.
Remember, I used to be Space Booty.
Oh, yeah. Well, you've had like 5 different screen names since you've come on to the Gilded, so.
Well, I can't find a good one.
Well.
So I think Trash House is perfect.
Yeah. Honestly, actually, it looks like you did do that. I was going to say you should have used Rocket Raccoon as your avatar, but after looking closely, I think you did do that.
I just asked AI, I said, draw me a picture of a raccoon with an AR.
Honestly, you could have probably just gone to any of the Guardians of the Galaxy promo art and pulled a very similar image.
Mr. Kovac.
Yeah. What's that? That would. I mean, I could have done that, but it's just easier to do that. I want to know what is what's the AR or AI stuff that what's his name? The guy with the motorcycle helmet.
Billy Von Baum.
Billy, yeah.
When he does his deep fakes, I have no idea.
Because they're pretty good.
Oh yeah, he does some disturbingly good deep fakes. Let's just give credit where credit's due.
Yeah.
His stuff. It's a good thing he's on our team, not the other team.
Well, I'm not sure someone with that kind of brain power be on the other team.
Yeah, you know what I'm getting at.
Although, granted, dude, there's a lot of military guys that are woke. But what's up? What did you just ask?
What I was gonna say is, what is it that you do?
I'm an auto technician. I work on cars. Right now, I'm taking a set of tires off of this BMW 3 Series. About to change a tire on the front, do a rotation and balance. Just got done doing the shocks on it.
Very nice.
Oh, yeah.
Dirty
Well,
work, but someone's got to do it, right?
exactly. Well, I went to school for this. I wanted to do this since I was little, so here I am.
It's always nice to be able to do what you love and what you're interested in.
Bingo. See?
I've said it a few times. If I were ever to, if I
And
were
there's
to,
this.
if I would have gotten into college back right after high school, I would probably have gotten into paleontology. And I think we lost the raccoon, or he had to go mute because of what he was working on. So, like I was saying earlier with the loadout available for this thing, the hatch that I just glued in place is going to get these two bolters attached to it on the top, and the other hatch is going to have a trooper sticking out of it to act as a gunner. So right now I'm going to snip out the parts for the heavy bolter that's attached to this vehicle, as well as the gunner, so I can get all that glued together. Now, normally for my Heresy era vehicles, I don't glue the weapons in place, at least on the secondary pintle mounts, so that way I can go back through and swap them out from one game to the next. However, for my APCs, since they're intended specifically for use with one squad or another, I like to go ahead and glue their weapon systems on them, so it helps to remind me exactly which one actually gets what. Since since this vehicle is going with a squad who is built around getting up close and personal and melting down heavy armor, it's got a weapon that has a lot longer range, so that if they're close to the tank, they can reach out and touch someone, and hopefully use the effect of a pinning mechanic to stop enemy models from coming right up on their exhaust pipe, so to speak. Now, a fun little bit of lore slash trivia with Space Marines. Their armor is very similar to the power armor that you see in games like Fallout. So every one of them, every Space Marine model you see that has a big old backpack on, that is actually the power source for his armor. Same holds true for Sisters of Battle when you see them with their big old backpacks. They are also wearing powered armor, similar to what you see in the Fallout franchise. And I'm getting a signal that my stream is a little bit on the unstable side, so if I drop off unexpectedly, gentlemen, I apologize. And Slick South, nice to see you. I'm just finishing out the project that I started on yesterday, and if folks want to join in, if you're in Rhinos Gilded, I posted it over there. If you're not, I'm more than happy to go ahead and post the link in the chat again for you. All I ask is you have a decent mic and a YouTube friendly screen name and avatar. When when it's a stream that doesn't have any particular topics, I'm more than happy to let folks jump in and just chit chat about whatever they want to. As long as it doesn't get me zapped from YouTube, I'm game for just about any topic you might want to discuss. And if you got any questions or comments or any show ideas, drop it in the chat. I will be more than happy to take it under advisement. And if it's a good show idea, I will definitely do like Pop does and write it down so I don't forget about it at a later date. And I do know that early in the next calendar year, I am going to do another conspiracy theory stream. I just haven't decided what the topic is going to be yet. Also, fairly certain that I'm going to do a stream dealing with UFOs and aliens before the end of January, but I don't know yet. I'm going to keep my options open when it comes to that. Sorry about the dead air, but I was actually trying to focus on how exactly something is designed to go together. Because I will be honest, even though I've done one of this type of Rhino previously, it's been a while, and I had forgotten exactly how it glues, or how certain pieces are supposed to glue together. I also forgot some of the colors I used on other details. Alrighty. Yeah, we're at the stage of this particular vehicle now where it's not major detail work that's being done, it's minor in-depth detail that is intended to more or less bring the model to quote-unquote life on the tabletop. So this is the point where you'll see me going through and hitting various areas that look like buttons or light fixtures to really call those details out visually, as well as the hinges on the Space Marines' power armor and their gauntlets, or in the case of things that have ammo feeds or magazines, a specific color palette for each of them. Okay, that's going to have to glue down or have something done. Try sanding that down first. Normally, I'm able to cut close enough to the piece that I don't have to worry about doing a huge amount of sanding on these models, but every now and then there's a piece where the plastic gate gets really super finicky. And on this particular Rhino, it is going to do its best to make me into a liar about doing the sand work. Yep. Unless I want it to look like it's blowing up, that is not going to work. So I either have to sand that down or I have to glue it down, and I really kind of want to keep that open because the amount of detail that I put into the back hatch of this thing, I really want people to actually be able to take a look at that and see it. Especially given what was done with the bore to make it a little bit more obvious that it's a bunch of separate components and not just one piece painted to look like a bunch of separate pieces. So I need to remember what I did with my sanding material. This is what happens when you are disorganized. You have something and then you forget what you did with it. Okay. Well, that's annoying. All right, plan B. Any of you who were in the military probably remember those old Gerber multi-tools that everyone was issued for a time. The one I've got somehow did not show up on any books, so I've been able to hang on to it. And it has turned into one of the most useful hobby tools that I own. So I'll end up having to retouch the red on some parts of this, but that should get those nubs taken care of, so I can go ahead and just let gravity do some of the work and press fit this down into place. Again, I'm going to assume that the designers did not engineer enough of a tolerance on the piece to make sure that certain elements could actually move without some significant modification and preparatory work. Because on the 40K Rhinos, the back hatch actually can just fit in and slot in and out using gravity alone. On this one, you had to really bore it out because the hinge was not the right diameter for the hinge pins. And now that the upper hatch is gravity placed, all that remains to be done on the main hull of this tank is gluing on the HK missile, which will happen after I've finished the last little bit of detailing on it, as well as the exhaust pipes. So rather than continuing to beat that horse after I glue together the heavy bolter, that's when I'm going to go ahead and get the exhaust pipes finished out and get them glued into place, allowing me to focus on the last little detail bits for this vehicle. The spotlight, the smoke launchers, and the weapons array. As well as the gunner who's sticking out of the vehicle ready to hose down whatever's unfortunate enough to get in his path. Now, I am not gluing this on just yet because I do need to do a bit of paint work on these cables coming off. And once it's glued on, as you can see, that will not exactly be the most user-friendly to get into unless I want to do a bunch of retouching. So, that's going to go over there, that's going to go over there. I'm going to go with black metal for the uppermost tips of the exhaust pipe. And even though it won't exactly match the other Rhino that I've currently done up for the Blood Angels, I'm probably also going to apply a little bit of black metal on the tip of the missile in its launch tube. Because again, personal belief, depending on how hot the exhaust is, paint probably won't stay on there for a long period of time without burning off. And in the case of the missile, it's what's known as a hunter-killer missile, and for the longest time, lore behind them had that those things had an unlimited range in the tabletop and were pretty much guaranteed to hit whatever it is they were shot at. So I want it to look like a type of missile that would have a radar transparent dome and could thus see its target, metaphorically speaking. Alrighty. Now, once I've got all these smokestacks fully finished out with what I intend to do with them, they will be getting glued directly to the side of the vehicle. Yeah, there we've got a nice bit of contrast between the black and the metallic of the missile. All right. Now, you might notice that there are certain areas that will need to be retouched where the red just did not take the first time. I will do that after I've got everything glued on that's going to glue on. And the simple fact of the matter is, I do it that way because some of these glues have the bad habit of fogging, and some have the bad habit of leaving a glossy area. So rather than trying to guess what's going to do what, by doing them all at the very end as a retouch, you can kind of blend everything together a little bit more smoothly and a little bit more nicely. At least that's been my experience. There are other folks who do this hobby that say that what I'm doing is completely bass-ackwards. They have a technique that works for them. I have a technique that works for me. And anything that I'm doing, if you are into models of any kind and you feel like you can steal it and use it, steal it and use it. I wouldn't be telling you all how to do this if I didn't want you all to make use of it yourself and make it your own. Okay. So, that's all for the exhaust stacks put in place. Got the running boards on the side access hatches put in place. Now all that we are left with is doing black on the front glacis, the metallics for the guns that fit up in this top hatch, and the gunner / all the bits and bobs for this opposite hatch. Now, I'm not gluing this hatch in because I like the thematic and cinematic ability to actually have it twist to indicate that, yeah, he is shooting at a specific target or a specific group of targets. Some players like to glue everything in place. I will be honest, I love the idea of, if you're snapping photos of these things, being able to get down at model's eye level and snap a photo and actually have the model looking like it's shooting at the thing you're saying it's shooting at. Again, other people, different opinions. That's them. Now, one thing that I am going to say when it comes to the Blood Angels specifically, in their lore, every Blood Angel, after the arrival and reunion with their founder and Primarch Sanguinius, was encouraged to practice some kind of artwork in addition to his military skill set. So you had sculptors, you had painters, you had weaponsmiths, you had all sorts of skill sets in the Blood Angels Legion and later Blood Angels chapter. So this particular vehicle, once I'm done with the basic work that's going on into it today, I may end up showing doing a community tab photo later with some additional decals added to it to make it look as though the vehicle has been given some kind of murals or some kind of scroll work by its crew. Again, I don't know yet. I don't make those final decisions until well after the vehicle is to the point that I consider table ready. And what I define as table ready and what other people define as table ready are not necessarily the same level of detail. This is a Marauder battle mech from BattleTech. A lot of people would call that tabletop ready. I have not done any of the servos on it. I haven't done the exhaust ports for its jump jets or its thermals, nor have I done anything with the weapons or cockpit. So to me, that's barely what I consider to be partially painted. But I am my own harshest critic when it comes to my paintwork. There are people who see stuff that's at the stage that Marauder I just showed you guys is at, and say it looks absolutely awesome. Because it's not where I consider to be ready, I don't consider it that way at this point. Now, when I get it finished here in a few months, or weeks or months, hopefully it'll be a different story. Right now I'm using a relatively small brush to pick out some of the side and top details on the driver and commander portals on the front glacis of this vehicle. And one of the fun things with these Space Marine tanks is either hatch could be used as the gunner's hatch or the driver's hatch, because I've already got the other one set up where it's kind of in British style with the driver on the right of the vehicle instead of the left. I decided this one's going to mirror it. There is nothing that I've seen anywhere that says it has to be done that exact way. Now, some of Games Workshop's kits are built in such a way where you have to build them that way for vehicles. Others, like this little APC, it's all in how the modeler decides to build it. Now, the black I'm using for this front glacis is called Abaddon Black. It's got I think it's got a slight tinge of blue to it and is slightly on the glossy side, which makes it very easy to visually distinguish from other black paints that are currently available from GW and other sources. This is something that allows you to do where, say, a piece of armor is painted black, whereas a soldier who's wearing that armor and has a black undersuit can have a different black as the undersuit. I also have a couple of gloss blacks that I use for various other things. What I'm using on this Hunter Killer missile tube is called, oh, where is it? I want to say it's called Glossy Black. Yep. It is Model Colors Glossy Black by Vallejo. This one gives you a nice, what I would classify as a mid-gloss, because it's not quite to the point where it looks like glass or polished boots, but it's also not something where it's super dim. To me, this resembles strongly a clean rifle after it just got done with maintenance, or a 50 cal that had just come out of the arms room. Same holds true for this heavy bolter, where it's got all these areas of the gloss black applied to it, which some of that is going to be redone here before too long. Because honestly, the heavy bolter, just like a lot of other heavier Space Marine items, I think deserves a little bit of additional detail work. Not necessarily scroll work per se, but additional detail work. Like I said yesterday, 40K has this weird mix between traditional science fiction and Victorian steampunk type science fiction. So you can have bridges of starships that look like something right out of Star Trek. And you could literally have the exact same class of ship being commanded by a different character, where it looks like a Gothic cathedral. And the same holds true for a lot of these tanks. There are some players and hobbyists who will paint these things to the nines and get them to the point where you almost don't want to see them put on the tabletop for fear that they'll fall and chip. And then you'll see other people who do just a bare bones minimum if they paint it at all. I go somewhere in between based on how much detail I think is appropriate for said vehicle. Because rhinos are essentially a frontline workhorse troop transport. I like them to be detailed, but I don't necessarily go to the point of turning them into mobile pieces of sculpture. I have seen some folks who have taken the same kits, like what I'm working on, and who do full freehand murals on them. Those individuals have my utmost respect, because I know I do not have that skill. You guys, some of you guys might think what I'm doing looks amazing. Believe me, there are a few hobbyists out there who look at my stuff and are like, are you done with that, or are you going to do more to it? Again, it's all in the level of detail that the individual wishes to go to on it. I personally just love to see people actually painting their minis up and getting them to a point where if you were to see it in a video game or a movie, you would not be going, I don't think they did quite everything they needed to with that. But I like to have a more cinematic experience with my games. Again, I'm not going to say there's a right or a wrong answer on this. It's all up to the individual user and individual player. Okay, so we are to the point for us to start actually hitting some of the really fine details. And this is something that may or may not show up nicely on my camera, which one of these days I am going to upgrade to something where I can adjust the focus. For now, I'm working with what I've got. I'm not doing this to make money or to get famous. I'm doing this as a hobby and as a form of therapy. So I apologize if there's certain details that you're wanting to know more about that you're not able to tell. If you all would like, I will be more than happy to post photos of this once it's once it's finished out into Gilded, or maybe do a community page post on my YouTube channel directly. Okay, so what I've just snipped out are the arms for the gunner and the pieces for the searchlight for this particular vehicle. And the next step for this thing's path to getting to my level of tabletop ready is going to be assembly of the searchlight. Now, mechanically, this doesn't do much except in games where the night fighting rules are in effect. But I like the idea of keeping tanks for Space Marines and Imperial Guard relatively uniform. Therefore, this particular tank is going to have a searchlight over where the driver's seat would be, just off of his shoulder, just like the one next, just like this other one. I just wanted to see exactly how it is I glued that together. Because the searchlight the smoke launchers, and the HK missile all have basically wide open spots where you can put them darn near anywhere you want on the vehicle. The HK missile is going to end up going back here, sitting at a slight angle, because, like I said, they used to have this rule where they could shoot pretty much wherever they wanted on the table. I think they finally, in recent editions, nerfed that down to like 48-inch distance. But I still think it makes sense to have it set up at an angle, because unless you're firing a direct fire missile, it does need to go up in the air, and if it's an anti-tank weapon, it kind of wants to find the soft upper skin of an armored vehicle. At least if you're using old school descriptions on how tanks are set up. That may have changed in recent years with advancements in armor and tactics, but I do not know for certain. The color I'm currently using for the barrel of the gun, and I used for the back plate of the missile launcher, is called Leadbelcher. It's a good grayish metal color that looks, in my opinion, very similar to some of the metallic components inside of firearms. Not necessarily the bluing on the bigger or on the exterior of the rifles, but more along the lines of the barrel itself, the interiors, and the parts where you would want lubricant going and not have something sticking to it. As you can see, I'm also applying it to the barrels of the smaller bolt guns that are going to go on the driver's side cupola. Now, I know I'm getting a little bit of bleed over on some of this. That's okay. It's going to get retouched, and in a couple of these locations, it's areas that may or may not be noticeable. Also, it's one of these things where when the cases are spat out from these weapons, or from these shots, it would make sense for one, the impacts, and two, the heat, to chip away what they're using to colorize the weapon. Oh, dadgummit, I forgot to paint the other side of that particular gun. I hate it when I do that. But then again, I also just hate backtracking, especially when I'm doing hobby work. I'm not going to go and do like a lot of YouTubers and say, drop me a like and subscribe, because if you like it, you've probably already dropped a like, and if you're here, you've probably already subscribed. So, I do appreciate all of you stopping by to watch me bloviate about this, and essentially watch paint dry while I'm doing it. You all could be doing pretty much anything else with your time today, and I just find it heartening that you all decided to spend however much time we're going to be here listening to me jawjack. Hopefully you found something of interest in this and are not just doing it to boost up my already oversized ego, according to some people. Alrighty then. Now, since I'm already having to break out the glossy black paint to fix certain areas, I'm going to go ahead and retouch those areas that I don't want to have a huge amount of overlap on. And yeah, I know it's still wet. I'm okay with this because, like I said, sometimes shell casings and rounds will wear away at the parts of the weapon that they impact when they're being ejected from said weapon. And this is also allowing me to go in and fix areas that I noticed a second ago were not exactly the way I wanted them to be. Okay, so that heavy bolter is almost finished. I am going to call this HK missile finished, so let's get it glued onto the area that it's going to call its new home. Now, you all might have noticed I'm not doing anything yet with the gunner. That is because he is going to have a lot of fine detail work being done on him for the soft parts of his armor joints, his glove or his gauntlets, not necessarily the neck piece, because the way the model is designed, he essentially has no neck once he's fully assembled, and other key elements of the model himself that I consider to be worthy of going into extra detail on. Also, because I didn't pay attention when it was on the sprue, I need to add the gloss coat to where the heavy bolter trigger mechanism is on that one hand. Now, an interesting thing with 40K in general and Horse Heresy in particular is Space Marine armor had various marks and patterns over the centuries that it was being used and developed. And it is not uncommon in lore or on the table to find people have mixed and matched different bits and pieces from different eras of the armor. The driver of this vehicle is equipped with what's known as Mark III iron armor, which has a bunch of small rings and hard plates applied over those rings to make it make it flexible, but also theoretically strong. In some of the lore, those rings are a complete and total pain in the butt for the armorers to actually go and maintain, to the point where they as quickly as they could, they did switch away from it. In all honesty, though, the helmet on this particular model of armor, I really like because, honestly, to me that looks like a sci-fi interpretation of a old-fashioned knight on horseback. And there's just something really intimidating and not or gives you the I don't want to mess with this guy vibe when you look at him. And I'm really hoping that when they start putting out Assault Marines for Horus Heresy, that's the armor pattern that they use. Okay. Now, because the Blood Angels, like I said previously, were known to be artisans in addition to warriors, there is a lot of gold filigree that goes onto a lot of their stuff. And this particular gunner, his armor is going to have a fair degree of gold applied to the helmet and to the waist. Mainly because it gives a nice visual pop, and because of the fact that it is kind of a way for the Blood Angels to delineate veterancy status. Because in the lore and on the table, Blood Angels sergeants and commanders generally have gold armor, and their more high-ranking officers tend to have gold, what's referred to as artificer armor. that's molded in such a way to imply a physique that Hercules would be inspired by. Even though, if you also look at the lore, they shouldn't have, or they have no individually defined ribs, because one of their implants basically turns their rib cage into a, well, basically a bony box. How they would actually breathe with that, I don't know, but hey, it's science fiction. You can ignore certain things that don't make a lot of sense. I'm also going to do gold around the viewports on the front end here. Now, I'm not doing any coloring on the viewing blocks on these hatches yet, because once I've done the weathering, I'm going to go back through and retouch them with a glossy green color to make it look like they are a reflective glass-like surface. And green because traditionally Blood Angel's optics are painted in a greenish hue. Okay, so there we go. The viewports have been, or have had their rims done. Let's add a little bit more to that to give it some definition. Going to go ahead and do the next metal component on the big gun, which is going to be its ammo feed and its pintle mechanism. Which, being that this is a big heavy machine gun equivalent, I'm going ahead and doing this in just plain old steel. The actual color is called Iron Breaker, but as you can see, it gives you a nice chrome-like steel color. Because with these, I want it to look like it's been used heavily, but not so heavily as to have been corroded. And any of you who've worked with magazines know that once they've been loaded and unloaded a few times, if they've been painted, they've already started to lose their paintwork. So my theory is the Space Marines probably wouldn't bother with painting them in the first place. They'd probably just coat them in an anti-corrosive type material and call it good. The pintle, my thought process with this is that it's something that they literally just broke out and installed right before going into whatever combat zone that they're in. So there is that for right now. Now the ammo feeds for the two smaller bolt guns that are going on here with it. Yeah, we've reached a point with this particular model where the paintwork and the detail work goes pretty much snap, snap, snap. And we're getting quickly to a point where, as the hobbyist, I would have to decide where I'm going to stop adding details, because there gets to be a point, as any of you who've done a model aircraft or model tank or ship or car knows, that you're adding details just to add details. And it gets to a point where it finally starts to detract from the overall appearance of the model or the figure you're working on. And in the case of these, that can happen, that can sneak up on you really quick. Now, these two metallic plugs that I'm working on right here, in theory, a Space Marine would be able to plug into his vehicle using his armor and get an immediate diagnostic from the vehicle's central computer, or as they call it in 40K, the machine spirit. One of the interesting things with Warhammer 40K is technically artificial intelligence is illegal. However, every machine with a computer has what they call the machine spirit, which is a quasi AI that has its own personality in many cases. And sometimes these vehicles, they have the personality of a loyal beast of burden that wants to move in and do whatever, just goes at a really plodding rate. Others have the personalities of a feral animal. It's up to the individual users to control the machine spirits of their vehicles. I personally would think, with my knowledge of how mechanics actually work, that those are just the pilots trying to explain their quirks and why they're reacting the way they are, as it being some kind of pseudo mystical mumbo jumbo influencing how they're behaving. But it's a fun little bit of lore and trivia, and we've all had vehicles that we could swear do not want to accelerate or do not want to go below a certain speed, even though you could swear up and down that you had your foot on the brake or the gas, and it just either didn't want to go or it didn't want to stop. Like I said, I'm sure we've all been there, where our cars have done things that just don't make sense. In 40K, that would be explained away as the machine spirit. But this particular tank, I am going to say, is very close to finished. Got just a few minor things left to glue on and paint on. Oh, I actually forgot, since I'm not putting the dozer blades in place, I need to do the tow cable, or tow hooks on this thing. Because anyone who's ever worked with armored vehicles, or just heavy tracked vehicles, knows you need a way to pull it out if it gets stuck somewhere that it can't pull itself out of. And being that these are combat vehicles in one of the most combat-intensive militaries in any science fiction universe I've ever come across, yeah, it's probably a good idea to have a way to pull them out when they get blown out. And this also allows me to retouch areas on the smoke launchers that I missed earlier. Okie dokie. And back to the gunner for a moment, which I forgot to do some of the trim work on his shoulder pads. Because the driver of this vehicle and the gunner of this vehicle would probably be a veteran of several different campaigns, I decided that would only make sense for them to have gold rim for their shoulders and for their helmets. Mainly because the Mark III armor that they're wearing is considered one of the more quote-unquote venerable patterns of Space Marine armor that is still actively in use at the point in the story where the Horus Heresy occurs. So for all anyone knows, these guys could be veterans of multiple battles of the Great Crusade, or they could even have been involved in the battles on Earth that led to the unification of the world under the Emperor of Mankind. Don't know. Honestly, I don't know if I really want to go digging into that kind of backstory, because some of that stuff gets really interesting, and not in the good way. Where did it go? That's going to be the right one. Yep. Yeah, I had to do a double check because the paint that I like to use for my Blood Angels joints is something called Eclipse Gray, which is a really dark gray, light black color. Because again, I want it to look like it's something that is flexible, but also probably painted as opposed to a rubberized material. And what I'm hitting on right now are the rings that are semi-flexible on this particular pattern of armor that I mentioned earlier. And I'll be going back through and retouching that part with some of the red paint here in just a moment. Now, even though there's some areas on these shoulders that have the rings exposed, there's not going to be any work done on them because when the shoulder pads go in place, that will be covered up completely with no way to see it unless somebody were to pop off those shoulder pads. And I would hope that no one's going to pop them apart at any point in the future once it's done. So there is one hand. There's the other hand. Oh, and now we are to the point where this can be essentially glued together and fitted out. Now, because I like to be able to rotate these hatches, I am not gluing this together in the vehicle mounting point. I'm going to be doing it outside, so that way it doesn't stick to things that I don't want it to stick to on the model itself. And you'll also have noticed I didn't do any of the outer rim on the shoulder pads yet. That will be done once it's glued onto the model. And what I'm doing at the moment is just test fitting to make sure exactly where I want to glue the gun onto. Oh, oops. I forgot about the power supply that he has going into the vehicle. Like I said earlier, the big backpacks you see on Space Marine Power Armor in 40K are their power supplies. And those would not really work very well in an armored vehicle, getting in and out of the hatch. Honestly, the shoulder pads really wouldn't work very well getting in and out of the hatch. But the other Rhino that I've got has them, so I figured keep it uniform. As much as the Primarch Sanguinius might have encouraged his soldiers to engage in artistic endeavors, I very much doubt that he really liked it when they got overly atypical in how they had their material looking or behaving. Okay. Oh, dadgummit. Normally I'd be using super glue for this, but the super glue I've got is a little on the temperamental side when the temperature starts getting at certain areas, and the humidity has to be just about right for it to work properly. So I'm going with the Citadel plastic cement that is actually formulated for these particular models. Okay, the gunner is in position. Now for the gun. Alrighty then. There is all of that. Let's bring that up a little bit more. So it actually looks like he's shooting level or semi-level. Yeah, while that's curing, I'm going to pop off the smoke launchers and the bolt guns for the other hatch. And I know this is not necessarily everyone's cup of tea. If you like this content, please let me know. If you want me not to do this again, let me know, and if I ever get the urge to do it again, I'll do it on the other channel that I have that I use specifically for hobby, game, and other non-serious stuff. Okay. Now, all these extra bits and pieces that are on here, I will save for use on future projects, either to create scraps or to use as base decorations for other pieces, so it actually looks like they're on a battlefield that has had a lot of vehicles get smashed on it. Oh, excuse me. One of the hazards about this time of year is sinuses and upper respiratory issues going haywire. Okay, that hatch will be the last thing I glue on. So now it's to the point where this vehicle is almost to the point where I am going to be happy to put it on the table alongside the squad of Marines that it's supposed to be working in conjunction with. So that cure. Let's let that cure. And let's get our tow hooks put in place. Now there is no exact placement guide for where these tow hooks are supposed to go. It's just all based on what you think looks best for that particular model. I'm trying to put them in such a way where it looks like they've got a reasonably wide area to hook up to and still have enough room for the crew and anyone else who's going in to recover the vehicle could actually get to it. I'd have to do that. Okay, while all those other pieces are having a chance to get partially cured, I actually can't do that yet because I need to do the gold on the inside there, so let's get that done. See, this is the point of any model that I work on where I really have to be cautious because I'm about ready to call it finished, and it's real easy to cut corners when you get to this stage. Because there are some of these pieces that you're getting into the element of detailing where you're like, do I really want to deal with this, or am I happy with where it's at? Because these shoulder pads, the rims can be seen once it's assembled. If you're going to paint one part of it, you kind of need to paint all of it, or else the entire vehicle will not look right. And it helps not to have butterfingers when you're working on these. Alright, now for the machine guns on the other hatch. Alright, plugged in place, ready to go. Smoke launchers. I like to put the smoke launchers on these Blood Angels rhinos right above the headlights. But the thought process being, if they were to actually kick off the smoke launchers, the headlights would pretty much be useless anyway. And you would want to go ahead and kill the lights to make sure you didn't have something there that a bad guy could still theoretically home in on. Oh, darn it. No, that's exactly like I did on the other one. Alright, we're repositioning ever so slightly so that way it actually looks like it's going at an elevated position and not a flat or a declined position for the smoke launchers. Still same thought process, just I don't know if I cut the other ones at a slight angle on the other rhino that I've been using as the reminder piece, or if they changed the way that these are sculpted between when I bought the previous one and when I bought this one. Either way, either one of those potentialities is there. And it could also be that I just derped when I did my initial assembly. Can never rule out your own silliness when it comes to things like this. Okay. And here we go. The last bit of gluing, well, next to last little bit of gluing that needs to be done on this vehicle. There's one shoulder pad put in place. And the other. Now, eventually, when this model is 100% finished, there will be a Blood Angels insignia put on this shoulder here. I'm not doing that today because, one, it would not be really all that visible for you guys, and two, I honestly don't like water slide decals, and I wait as long as I can before I actually start using them. Last little bit of paintwork on the gunner. And before I go into that, mainly as a test to see if there's actually still anyone watching in the chat, this little indentation right back here, this little circular part that looks like a thermal exhaust area, what color do you think I should go with on that? Chrome, brass, or something of a burnt metal? I'd like your input, please. Okay, Ray Pacino, thank you for, and I'm sorry about mutilating your name, Ray Pacino, thank you for your input. And thank you for actually watching this. I know it's definitely not most people's cup of tea. I'm a wargaming nerd, but I normally don't watch these hobby streams because generally speaking, they bore me to death. So the fact that you're watching it, thank you. Okay. Our gunner is more or less finished. And the closest thing to burnt metal I have is the blackened steel that I used earlier on the exhaust ports. So that's what I'm going to go with. That gives a nice little contrast for the vehicle. And to clean up some of the area where glue rubbed off paint, a little bit of Mephiston red to fix that. And to retouch a couple areas that I missed earlier on the gun arms. Evie. Evie. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. My cat decided she wanted to play with the computer at the same time I'm trying to do a stream. Love her to death, but really need to teach her to stay off of things when I'm trying to use them. Okay, that is all the paintwork that I think I'm going to do on this for right now. So there we go. A more or less, if the gunner would stay in position, a more or less fully painted Blood Angels Rhino APC from yesterday and today, taken almost 100% from sprue to what I consider to be tabletop ready. Now the back hatch I did magnetize, so I can open it and close it during the course of a game. And I'm going to have to do something with these top hatches. Probably going to have to glue them, even though I really don't want to. But I want to thank everyone who joined in, everyone who viewed, and everyone who decided to participate in the chat. And special thanks to Trash Ops for joining in earlier. I hope you all have a nice remainder of your holiday season. If I don't do a stream between now and New Year's, I hope you all have a nice New Year's celebration if you choose to celebrate. Be safe, everyone, and I hope to see you next year for whatever craziness comes around.